Now to this. Breaking just moments ago, a major win for President Donald Trump after a New York appeals court says they will throw out his massive civil fraud penalty that could have cost him over $500 million.
President Trump and his businesses pay over $364 million over allegedly falsifying business records with interest that grew to be over $500 million. We know that President Trump nearly a year ago from now appealed that. The appeals court did not make a decision on their case.
Andrew Cherkasky. So Donald Trump was able to post a $175 million bond. He did it with a bond agency. Now AG Letitia James says the agency that wrote the bond for Trump is not qualified to do so. So she's reportedly beginning the process of claiming Trump's properties. Is this ever going to end?
Well, I'm going to call this an administrative or bureaucratic technicality that's going to have to be worked out. It does appear as though the bond company doesn't have all of the requirements necessary in terms of what they provide to the state of New York. I believe that's something they're going to be able to work out.
Forgive me for interrupting.
Sure.
It's not that they don't have the money, though, right?
Right. Well, it's not just the money. It's additional money on top of it as the surety for that money. So there has to be certain requirements that are satisfied in the state of New York. I believe this company comes out of California. I think that as they work that out, the court is going to have tolerance for Donald Trump working that out to make sure that that's done.
The moment New York escalated from empty threats to seizing bank accounts, freezing funds, and moving to auction his properties, reality finally hit. The legal system Trump had spent a lifetime gaming was now forcibly extracting its dues. Rather than meeting the moment with strategy or dignity, he completely disintegrated in open court. His explosive outbursts at the judge laid bare a stark truth to the world. The myth of his invincibility was permanently broken.
Former President Donald Trump and his sons and two former Trump Organization officials are now appealing that $464 million civil fraud judgment. That was the ruling issued on Friday. Earlier this month, they were found liable for fraud, conspiracy, and issuing false financial statements, accused and found guilty of inflating the value of real estate assets to get favorable loans. During the appeal process, the amount, though, will continue to grow by more than $110,000 a day due to interest rates.
At the center of this dismantling stands New York Attorney General Letitia James, who just delivered the most catastrophic blow to Trump's financial empire in his public history. Armed with a $464 million judgment, she cut through his desperate maze of delay tactics, frantic appeals, and outright denial. In the end, the stalling failed entirely. Time and again, higher courts looked at the evidence and echoed the definitive ruling Judge Arthur Engoron handed down after a marathon trial. Donald Trump had built a house of cards by systematically defrauding banks and insurance companies.
Here's a live look at the White House. Tonight, a massive immigration crackdown is in the works. The Trump administration announcing plans to review more than 55 million visa holders looking for potential deportation cases. Meantime, a major legal win for the former president. A New York appeals court has thrown out the $500 million civil judgment against President Trump and his companies.
The courts found that he had systematically inflated his property values to secure favorable loans, resulting in a penalty of nearly $500 million. As interest compounded, the total breached the $500 million mark, leaving Trump entirely out of options. He couldn't find a bonding company to take the risk, he couldn't get a court to reduce the fine, and he lacked the liquid cash to pay it himself. A stark contradiction to his decades of bragging about limitless wealth. Consequently, James did what New York law empowers her to do when a civil defendant refuses to pay.
The largest judgment to date has been issued against former President Donald Trump. Judge Engoron has imposed a penalty of more than $350 million against Donald Trump, as well as his adult sons and his corporation in that civil fraud case brought by New York Attorney General Letitia James. The former president is being ordered to pay more than $354 million in damages. His co-defendants are being ordered to pay another $10 million in fines.
James didn't ask politely, and she didn't negotiate. She secured seizure orders and executed them. On a Friday afternoon, timed for maximum disruption, her office froze multiple bank accounts tied to both Trump personally and the Trump Organization. Leaked reports suggest they locked down a staggering $50 to $80 million in liquid cash. Hemorrhaging money at home and watching his revenge lawsuits flail in court, Trump is now looking abroad. He recently met with oil executives to float plans for Venezuela, but they aren't buying the act. One insider used a food metaphor to call his bluff, describing his empty promises as an empanada. The quote, "My impression is it's empanada all over again. Ultimately, these executives would love to profit off the man on your left, but they know his promises are as flaky as the treats on your right."
With the Trump Organization convicted on tax fraud, a jury finding the company guilty on all charges today.
Tonight, the company that was the foundation of former President Trump's career and eventual rise to the White House, the Trump Organization, found guilty by a Manhattan jury on all 17 counts, including a scheme to defraud.
But out in the real economy, hiring has hit a wall. Building on the inflation and economic hurdles of his first year back, the U.S. managed to add fewer than 600,000 jobs in 2025. To put that in perspective, Biden actually did better. We haven't seen hiring slow down this much since the pandemic in 2020. Put simply, the first year of Trump's second term delivered the absolute worst job creation numbers since the 2009 financial crisis. And where was the focus while the job market stalled? On the massive sums of money Trump had to spend on his lawyers, just trying to keep his own operations running.
You've been following this money trail with Donald Trump. There's so many money things happening with Donald Trump this week. There's a reduced bond that he does actually have to produce. And I'd love to know your thoughts on where you think he is there. Donald Trump is on paper many billions of dollars wealthier than he started the week because his stock has started trading.
Attorney General Letitia James didn't negotiate. She acted. To satisfy a $500 million fraud judgment, her office systematically froze $50 to $80 million in Trump's bank accounts and placed liens on foundational properties, including his Westchester Golf Club and the Seven Springs family estate. Ignoring his lawyer's warnings, Trump attended a status conference before Judge Arthur Engoron to protest the seizures. When Engoron made it clear the enforcement would continue, Trump completely unraveled. He screamed profanities at the judge in open court, forcing his visibly panicked lawyers to physically restrain him to avoid removal by federal marshals.
It was just 20 days ago that the president posted this on Truth Social, demanding that the Attorney General Pam Bondi do something about James, the former FBI Director James Comey, and Senator Adam Schiff of California. The Wall Street Journal reported last night that Trump actually thought he was sending that message directly to Bondi instead of posting it publicly for all of us to see. That mishap revealing the president was directly telling his attorney general who he should be indicted. And of course, now tonight, James is facing charges of bank fraud and false statements to a financial institution. And just yesterday, we watched as James Comey pleaded not guilty in his case. The defendant table is where the New York Attorney General will find herself in just about 2 weeks from tonight. But this evening, she also had this to say moments after that grand jury handed down the indictment.
This is nothing more than a continuation of the president's desperate weaponization of our justice system. He is forcing federal law enforcement agencies to do his bidding, all because I did my job as the New York State Attorney General. These charges are baseless, and the president's own public statements make clear that his only goal is political retribution at any cost.
Career prosecutors had objected to bringing this case against Letitia James, and the former U.S. attorney in the office that ultimately prosecuted her, it's the one that Trump put in that role months ago, resigned after he was facing pressure to bring this particular case because he felt there wasn't enough evidence to do so. He was replaced by Lindsay Halligan, a former Trump defense attorney and insurance lawyer who doesn't have prosecutorial experience, but she's now in charge of Virginia's Eastern District and has been for just over 2 weeks. In those 2 weeks, of course, we've seen the indictment of James Comey and now tonight, Letitia James. The history of Trump and James goes back years, of course. She famously sued the president and his company for business fraud.
Witnessing this total lack of self-control, James accelerated the process. Convinced he would never comply, she froze additional accounts, launched a hunt for hidden offshore assets, and began the procedural march to auction his physical properties. James destroyed Trump's foundational myth, the self-made billionaire. Forced to actually pay his debts, Trump was exposed. He lacked the liquid cash to pay the judgment, couldn't secure a bond, and watched his empire fall into a financial death spiral where every seized asset made it harder to fund his mounting legal defenses. Courts decisively rejected Trump's claim that a former president has immunity from civil judgments. By treating him like any other citizen, James emboldened other jurisdictions to aggressively pursue their own claims. Politically, the spectacle handed Democrats undeniable proof of his fraud. The man who built a political brand on absolute competence couldn't even save his own home from being liquidated.